Hey guys, another reviewer here. Now you're probably wondering why I am covering the topic that I'm covering. I'm not part of the age demographic, however, B-Lan is. She's in her early 20s, so when the book came out in 2007, she was a teenager, so she read it. And then whenever the Netflix original series came out earlier this year, she was watching it and I was kind of in the same room half paying attention. I kind of got more invested into the latter portions of the series because things started to get a little heavy and I, kind of have some insight in what it's like to be, bullied. I mean, look at me. Attractive, charismatic, intelligent, ripped to absolute shreds. There had to be an origin story, right? And mine was that I just wasn't really having a nice time in school. I was definitely on the receiving end a lot. Which leads to the main point of this show, which is suicide, which is something I also feel like I have a bit of experience in, as I had thought about it a lot. Fortunately, I'd never attempted, so unfortunately, I don't really have the experiences of one who attempted and survived, so I can't really speak for anybody in that camp. But I can definitely speak for somebody who's contemplated it an awful lot. So let's just kind of get into that later, and I'm just going to get into my review of the 2017 Netflix original series 13 Reasons Why, based on the 2007 book of the same title by Jay Asher. 13 Reasons Why is a teen drama that follows high school student Clay Jensen, played by Dylan Minnette, that has just discovered a shoebox filled with cassette tapes on his front porch. Upon listening to the first one, he finds they're from a friend and coworker of his named Hannah Baker, played by Katherine Langford. They contain the 13 reasons why she took her own life. Tony Padilla, a fellow student in Clay's school portrayed by Christian Navarro, keeps an eye on Clay to make sure he's taking the messages on the tapes well and pushes him to keep listening to the tapes through all the difficulties that Clay has. The book takes place over the course of an evening, and Tony does have a very large part where he helps Clay along whenever he decides to give up. Though the show kind of expands on everything. The show takes place over several days. Tony is there several times to several different capacities, but frustratingly enough, Clay decides to give up basically every other episode. The show has a large and impressively diverse cast. Most of the actors are fairly unknown, as the only person I recognized was Principal Gary Bulland, portrayed from the guy from Wings. Not that one, the other one. No, not that one either. Okay, there we go. The subjects of the tapes are Justin Foley, played by Brandon Flynn, Jessica Davis, played by Alicia Bowe, Alex Standall, played by Miles Heiser, Tyler Down, played by Devin Druid, Courtney Crimson, played by Michelle Celine Ang, Marcus Cole, played by Steven Silver, Zach Dempsey, played by Ross Butler. Shit. This is the part of the cast list where I always blank. Fucking Ryan. Ryan Shaver is played by Tommy Dorfman, and though most of the cast appears from episode 1 and on, he just kind of shows up at some point. It's like they were like, who's this guy named Ryan? He's got a few lines here in the script. Ryan? Who the fuck's that? Oh, I don't know, but he's got a tape later on, I think. Oh, fuck, we gotta cast him! Filming starts in 10 minutes! Sherry Holland is played by, and I promise you, I'm not gonna get this right, Agiona Alexis. The interesting thing about this character is her name was Jenny Kurtz in the book. I have no idea why they changed it, but anyway. Bryce Walker is played by Justin Prentice, and Kevin Porter, or Mr. Porter as he's referred to as most of the time, is played by Derek Luke. What good is a teen drama if we don't have a side plot involving the parents to distract us from the main plot? Olivia and Andy Baker are portrayed by Kate Walsh and Brian D'Arcy James, respectively, and Clay's mother is involved, Lainey Jensen, who's portrayed by Amy Hargreaves. Now, the plot of this show is kind of confusing as there are several things going on at once. The first of two main plots follows Clay listening to the tapes and the show playing that out. The rules are laid out on the first tape and are very simple. You were to listen and then pass them on. Failure to do so will result in them being released publicly, as there's a second copy, and if you have the tapes, something you've done is one of the reasons Hannah killed herself, so that fear would likely keep anyone that finds themselves in possession of these things to want to keep them quiet. The other main plot the show mostly consists of is the paranoia of the subjects on the tapes, as it's revealed that Clay's tape doesn't come up until number 11, which means everyone with the exception of Bryce Walker and Mr. Porter has listened to the tapes and subsequently their own. It doesn't help that as Clay listens to the tapes, he gets increasingly more frustrated at everyone staying silent about the things he's hearing and starts acting against some of the people on the tapes. The show switches the order of the reasons from the main plot of the book. That way it can create this kind of other main plot that the entire show seems to rotate around. It even creates a plot for each episode that relates to the reason in some broad way. Of course, the show also adds subplots for each of the characters with their personal home life, which makes the plot of this show very, very dense, and essentially, if you're distracted for even a moment, you may miss very important plot elements and be confused for the rest of that episode. Now, on to the subplot that involves the parents. This subplot involves Hannah's parents suing the school for negligence. Olivia is often found roaming the halls of the school trying to find evidence of bullying, as well as antagonizing other parents and their children, while regularly confronting the faculty as well. I get this character, I really do. She's a mother that is distraught because she's lost her daughter in a way that probably could have been prevented. And she's just lashing out because she has no bearing on what's even going on. She's slowly realizing that she didn't even know her own daughter. But the thing is, she just comes off as cruel and bitter to everyone, just antagonizing everyone, blaming everyone around her, and not looking inside to see what she could have done, what signs she could have seen. You know, if she could have just gotten to know her daughter better, but it just never seems to be a thing she ever realizes, which really would be a good growth arc. In order to complicate things more, Clay's mother is representing the school in this lawsuit, and asks Clay if he knows Hannah or anything about bullying at the school. He of course has, and has been listening to the tapes, so he has all the answers in the world, but fear of the contents of his tape, which he hasn't gotten to at that point in the story, keeps him from revealing anything, and this just kind of repeats. There's a lot of repetition in this show to just pad it out and remind you of plot threads that are still left dangling. There are multiple instances of Clay trying to get information out of Tony, only to be assured that he has to trust him and listen to the tapes, which leads to a mountain climbing sequence where Clay nearly falls, which is supposed to inspire him to keep going on despite wanting to quit listening to the tapes several times. Actually, let's get this out of the way right now. There's a ton of build-up and guilt that drives Clay nearly insane, complete with hallucinations. But it's a huge letdown as his tape reveals he doesn't belong there. He's just there because Hannah wanted to explain why she made him leave when they were making out at Jessica's party, which led to her witnessing something that's actually relevant. To be honest, making this 13-hour-long episodes might have been more than any of these plots can really handle. In the latter episodes, they don't even get into the contents of the tapes until about halfway through. And that map that was in the book to let listeners know where to go to follow along with the story, well, that gets forgotten about halfway through the episodes. It's like the writers became so absorbed in writing the fluff that they forgot about important plot elements that came from the actual source material. Now, as much as I'm going to try not to spill the entirety of the plot here so that you can still watch the show after watching this video, we're still going to get into some pretty spoilery territory, so please be aware of that. The show deals with subjects that are common in teenage life that range from not knowing where you fit in with everyone else all the way up to sexual assault and behavioral changes while coping with said sexual assault. The spotlight is put on how when someone is trying to find their way in a new town and a new school, one rumor can cause a false reputation that can spiral out of control with very little action from yourself. Along the way, we also get to see paranoia in several forms. Guilt for the sake of just feeling guilty and not knowing what you did, guilt from actions you knowingly took and can't face, or guilt from actions you've knowingly taken and want to keep hidden. There's even an arc for someone that feels intense guilt for things they're caught doing, but always seem to get away with. Teenage traits are also brought to the spotlight, showing how they really affect how we interact with others: jealousy, pettiness, insincerity, entitlement, selfishness, and fear. As the show progresses, it explores more serious topics such as stalking, drug and alcohol dependency, and sexual assault. An episode I kind of want to spotlight is the final episode of the first season. There's so much build-up for so many plot threads that don't really feel like they get tied up. The episode previous to this one showed Hannah getting sexually assaulted by Bryce, then going home and compiling the list to end up making the tapes. Initially only to have 6, with 12 stories, she decides to give life one more shot and goes to Mr. Porter, the school's guidance counselor. During their meeting, he's distracted by his phone and doesn't seem to want to discuss Hannah's feelings, as she confesses she feels nothing for herself or anyone. He presses her until she asks if she were to report someone that had sexually assaulted her, that she would not have to see him and he will put him in jail. Mr. Porter roundaboutly tells her he will keep her safe, she has to move on, and since her assailant was a senior, he'll be gone soon. At this, she runs out, thus fulfilling the point of the show, which is taking her own life. Mr. Porter is the shittest guidance counselor ever, and obviously does not give a fuck about these kids. Throughout the series, Mr. Porter denies that this confrontation had happened. Unfortunately for him, the tape that talks about it isn't a recounting of the events, but rather a recording of the meeting as it happened. This is also the episode with the depositions of the Misfits, as Hannah's mother found all their names on the list Hannah made for the tapes. Many of them end up confessing several aspects of what has been going on in the school. One even confesses about the tapes. At this point, Clay forces Mr. Porter to face what he could have done and didn't by letting him know about the tapes, with the addition of a recording he had made, getting a confession out of Bryce and leaving them with him. So we're going to get closure on all this, right? Bryce is going to be sent to prison, Hannah's parents are going to win the lawsuit, and all the Misfits are going to be facing consequences for all their parts in this conspiracy? Well, absolutely fucking not. Instead of answers, we get more questions. We find out Tyler has been keeping a cache of weapons in his room, and Alex has shot himself in the head. I feel like these two things are related more so than the show gives on. Here's why, and I promise you, this is going to blow your fucking mind. When Tyler is facing blowback from his tape becoming mostly public due to Clay's interference, he's facing more bullying than usual, which leads him to be pulled into Mr. Porter's office for being pantsed. Mr. Porter treats this as trivial as he brings up that in his old school, kids shot each other. After this, Tyler starts doing strange deals with people in back alleys. Being a member of Yearbook, he has access to the darkroom, which has pictures of everyone involved on the tapes hanging up. Before we find out Alex shot himself, Tyler pulls down the picture of Alex. I think it's going to be revealed that Tyler shot Alex, and then Tyler is going to proceed to go full Columbine on the entire school. And this isn't me being insensitive, there's an actual reference to this. If you look in the corner of the screen of Tyler's little arsenal, the motherfuckers made pipe bombs. Mr. Porter being involved and obviously distracted and uninterested in everything that goes on with the students, compacted with Hannah's mother realizing she didn't really know her daughter, and the principal learning what has been going on in the school, all compound the trope of parents don't understand kids, which is common in teen media, but it's incredibly dangerous within the context here. It comes off as incredibly irresponsible to make adults look so incompetent on a subject where it has to be drilled into the heads of teenagers to learn to communicate with their parents. Mr. Porter directly inspires Tyler to become a school shooter. My conspiracy theories aside, even the one character that we should get absolute closure on because, well, she's fucking dead, is going to be appearing in the second season. I'm not making this up! There was apparently a panel that featured several of the stars and one of the executive producers, and he said that the next season's going to feature the same story but from someone else's point of view. Now, I still feel like the whole Tyler thing was definitely a setup, if not a red herring, I guess, but there's like 7 directors and a shitload of executive producers, so who really knows what's going to happen? Obviously, I haven't covered everything in this review, but this plot is incredibly dense and everything is interrelated, but the only thing you can really do is watch the show yourself. The most important thing that I can impart to you as a result of all this is that there are more resources available to you than the show lets on to not only help you if you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, but also to become more aware and know what to do when people around you are displaying warning signs of being suicidal. Another big issue I have with the show is that its world emulates everything a suicidal person would perceive as reality, whether things are that way or not. Everything is hopeless, no one is helpful or listens, everyone is either using you or they will leave you in the end, and all you can hope for is to go unnoticed, and the only way they'll actually listen to you and care about you is if you go through with it and kill yourself, but it really can't be emphasized enough that this is never the case. Ever since this show came out, I've seen a lot of people bashing it for glorifying suicide, and a lot of people defending it for putting, suicide in the spotlight, so that people become more aware of it. And it seems like everybody's response is to just post the suicide prevention hotline. Which, it's great and everything, but it doesn't really do anything to raise awareness or let people know what to do. I mean, the biggest step you can really do is learn the signs, learn what to look for in someone where they might be possibly contemplating suicide. And like the first step you can take is try to talk to them, Try to reach out to them. Now, don't get offended if they're like, "Listen, leave me alone. I'm just working through some things." Don't force it either. Don't force your opinions on somebody else in order to help them, because just putting in that effort and being turned away, you did what you could do. You showed your concern. And you know what? That might be all they needed. Like, they might not have wanted to talk about it, but they might have just wanted to see that people are actually concerned, and they might actually, keep that in mind and not go through with it, Not all suicide can be prevented, but people can at least try. And kids, teenagers, young adults, youths, whatever the fuck, listen to me. Reach out to your parents, reach out to your teachers, authority figures of some types, policemen, peers, your adult peers, Speak to them. Let them know what's going on. They're not as alien to you as you would think. They were once like you. Some of them don't remember that very well, but they do want to help you. There are people out there that want to help you. There are also people out there that want to hurt you. It's true. It's honest. Your perceptions of the world are not completely wrong. There are people out there that wish you harm for no reason, but don't let that affect your perceptions of everybody else. Reach out to whoever you can and talk to them. And if you put across that you're having these problems, they will give you a minute, or they'll send you to somebody who can. I mean, it's really important that we keep the lines of communication between people open. And that's the hardest thing whenever it comes to teenagers, because of the whole clique nature of high school and stuff, where if you're not a part of these cliques, you don't really have people to talk to, and adults are scary, Just talk to people, Reach out to people on both sides. The people who want to be more aware and want to help, and the people who are just drowning in these problems that don't know what to do. Just reach out. Please. Your life is worth more than what you think. Trust me. And also, whenever it comes to this whole bullying thing, this whole fucking people picking, just don't be a fucking dickhead, okay? Kids, teenagers, and even some adults don't seem to have a perception that other people have feelings, or that different people are affected by different things. Name-calling, physical contact, and other such things may be fine with friends who understand you're just horsing around, but it can really affect people you don't know very well, and that's only assuming you're doing it innocently. There are some people who have nothing better to do than drag other people down, and if you see it happening, the best thing you can really do is try to be friendly and helpful to the victim of the abuse. And yes, it is abuse. It's not minor, it's not nothing. It needs to be confronted and even reported to faculty if in a school setting, or to parents, or to police if need be. Harassment or bullying of any form is never okay. But again, don't take it personally if the victim doesn't want to talk about it. These things are very hard to work through when someone feels like they're a target to everyone, and it's very hard to trust. I know, I went through it and acted out at the wrong people myself. I apologize if the subject matter for this video seemed a bit heavy, but I felt like it was something that needed to be discussed while it's fresh in people's minds. As for my opinions on the show, well, I felt it was unnecessarily long, the plot was dense, convoluted, and at some points just dragged out. They utilized tropes that, well, it normally works with this genre, I just felt like it was sending the wrong message about the topic at hand. And then the cast just felt like the perfect group of negative archetypes for any type of mental illness. So, I mean, there's just a lot that I don't agree with that they have portrayed here. But outside of that, I guess it's an okay show. I mean, it's just something that you have to remember is for entertainment. So, with that, I will thank you for watching, and goodbye.